Welcome to the Athlete Insights Podcast, hosted by Yash Pad Day, a podcast focused on letting athletes tell their journeys in their sport. This podcast is presented by Boxed Water. Boxed Water is better.
Welcome into another episode of the Athlete Insights Podcast. Today I've got my guest, Eddie Sisneros. He is the PA announcer for UNC football, baseball, right? A variety of sports within UNC. He also does stuff with the Colorado Eagles as well, if I'm not mistaken. So Eddie, appreciate you taking the time and coming on, man. I know it's later in the night over there too in Colorado, so appreciate you kind of taking the time and chopping it up.
Yeah, man, I appreciate you reaching out to me and appreciate the opportunity. So
yeah. So with all my guests, I try to start from the top and work my way to where you are now. So I always talk to my guests about what is your earliest memory with sport? What is kind of what drew you to sport in general early on?
I would say my earliest draw to sports was probably, I think I was 9, when I first started playing baseball.
Yep.
And just kind of, I like the competition, like even though like at that time you're still playing against like your friends and stuff.
Yeah.
And just the ability to go out and compete and eventually go out throughout like middle school, high school and compete against other schools and other kids you don't know and just have that type of bragging right.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Into the college aspect, you gravitate to it and it's
Mhm.
just excitement.
And you said you started off with baseball. Is there any other sports that you kind of you sprinkled in as you kind of went through your youth career?
It was baseball, basketball. I did a couple years of wrestling. Didn't really gravitate to that too much. And then as I hit the high school, started playing like a lot of like club hockey.
Mm.
And then after graduation from high school, I didn't play anything just because I went to the Army for a
Yep.
couple of years. And
Yep.
then when I came to UNC, I got the opportunity to play some lacrosse. So you're actually catching me after lacrosse practice. So
Yep.
it's
And
a fun time.
yep. And so you said throughout, and then did you play on any high school teams throughout high school? Kind of how was your high school? We'll jump into that right into that. But how was your high school experience? And how did sports kind of help shape that high school experience for you?
Um, with that, man, it was one of those you held yourself to a higher standard when you're in high school playing sports.
Yeah.
It's because you don't want to allow yourself to get comfortable and kind of lack in classes and therefore become ineligible. So
Yeah.
I found myself being a much better student during basketball and baseball seasons. Uh,
Yeah.
Not so much any other time, but it definitely piped up a lot for me during those seasons.
Gotcha.
Um,
Gotcha.
yeah, with baseball, I definitely gravitated that a lot more.
Mhm. What position did you play? Infield, outfield, kind of
I was second base.
second base. Nice, nice in the infield, right? And so, and then you talked about, and I want to kind of get your kind of experiences that you've got. You've had a multitude of experiences in your life, and you said you went to the Army. First of all, thank you for your service, Eddie.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
And second of all, can you kind of describe your experience in the Army and then kind of how that has shaped you as a person now as you're doing a lot of things for UNC athletics, you're at UNC, kind of how has being in the Army and kind of going through those experiences shaped you throughout your UNC experience as a whole too?
I think the biggest thing that shaped me with being in the Army was just being more responsible.
Mhm.
During my time, I kind of had to grow up pretty fast.
Yep.
I I found that there really was no time to allow myself to be too comfortable.
Yep.
Especially when I was deployed. It
Mhm.
it wasn't really the right place to be comfortable and kind of be lazy.
Yeah.
Um, and then the ability, just the different schools that I was able to attend, like Aerosol School, Airborne School.
Mhm.
It takes a crazy guy to jump out of a perfectly good airplane.
Yeah.
Um, but one of those things, man, it allowed me to really find the confidence in myself to juggle a lot of things.
Yeah.
So when I got out of the army, I I first took a stab at going to college at the University of Texas.
Oh, okay.
I was there for a year.
Uh-huh.
Um, I'm sorry to say, man, I found myself more interested in the partying life and less about the academics. So
Mhm.
it did not go in my favor.
Got you.
So uh, left University of Texas,
Mhm.
got to Colorado, did some work for a year, and then went to Ames, which
Mm.
is just a couple miles from UNC
Yeah.
for a year.
Okay.
Um, then transferred to UNC and just I've been doing the thing here at UNC and
Yeah.
allowed myself to kind of go back into the habits of the military aspect and the mindset.
Mhm.
Definitely was able to buckle down and get back on the right track.
Hey, that's good to hear. That's kind of good to see kind of your progression. And when you think about how, and can you talk to me as well as like you, and like I said, you've had a lot of varied experiences. The Army, you said you mentioned Texas, you mentioned Ames, now UNC. How did you get involved with the PA announcing stuff that you do for UNC? How did you come across that? If you can talk about that for a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. So my time over at Ames,
Mhm.
at community college, I was going through some radio production, audio production, and broadcast announcing classes.
Mhm.
And I was able to land a job with the Northern Colorado Eagles, which they were a junior hockey team at the Greeley Ice House.
Yeah.
They needed a PA announcer on their Friday, Saturday, and Sunday games, so I was lucky enough to land that.
Yeah.
And I believe it was my third third season doing announcing for the Eagles
Mhm.
when there became an opening for a backup PA for the Colorado Eagles over there at Budweiser.
Yeah.
And took my shot and landed it. So kind of took my PA announcing to the next level with them.
Yeah.
And when I transferred over to UNC, at the time, Derek Fryer,
Mhm.
um, he posted up on the Instagram saying that they're needing a new PA announcer for volleyball,
Yeah.
and shot him a message. He told me to come in for an audition, and uh, was even 5 minutes in. He heard my announcing voice, I guess,
Yeah.
and
You
he's
do
like, "Yeah,
have a great announcing voice, I will say. I've been courtside with you and on the table there at Bank of Colorado Arena. You do have a great announcing a voice built
yeah,
from so
I appreciate that, man. I
I
appreciate that
appreciate
a lot."
it. So and then can you talk about your process? Like what's your process? I talked to athletes about, whether it's kind of how they train, how they go about their day, how they live their life as a student athlete. For you, what is your process when you go into PA announcing? Is there something you do, some pre-game aspect that you do that you add before? Kind of how do you go about that process?
Yeah, usually throughout the week, if I know, like obviously with soccer and volleyball,
Mhm.
they tend to be on later on in the week.
Yeah.
So I allow myself to be able to stick with, we'll say like green tea the morning of announcing, and then usually about 2 hours before I announce, I'll probably take like 2 or 3 cough drops,
Okay.
um, just to let it like soothe the throat and kind of opens up a little bit for me. And
Yeah.
then during the games, I got to make sure I drink a lot of water
Yeah.
uh, to make sure that my voice doesn't crack and stays in a healthy aspect. But other than that, man,
Nothing too crazy.
really not too much. No, I'm lucky enough that I can change the way I announce,
Mhm.
kind of based on the crowd engagement.
Yeah.
And obviously with the different sports is different crowd engagements. Like obviously football is different compared to volleyball, and volleyball is compared different to soccer.
Basketball.
Soccer is different from basketball, and all those are completely different from when I was announcing UNC hockey.
Yeah.
So yeah, it kind of allows me to really define how I need to announce, how my voice needs to change.
Mhm.
But but yeah, that's really it.
No, and it's great to see, and again, I've been able to see up close on how you've been able to enact that change from volleyball into basketball and things like that. Kind of how you've gone about your tone, your inflection, stuff like that changes according to the crowd, and it's great to kind of see, not only you feed off the crowd, but the crowd feeding off of you. I mean, the "Let's Go Bears" chants that you have. Uh, been great. I mean, infectious throughout the arena, at all times. So it's been great to kind of see that process. And so then you said, you found lacrosse and you still play lacrosse, if I'm not wrong, correct? Uh,
Yes.
Kind of how has that been your experience playing lacrosse and your experience at UNC building the lacrosse team and playing with the lacrosse team there.
It's actually been kind of fun, man, because when I first started playing lacrosse, there was originally like 6 of us that would show up for practice.
Yeah.
So it wasn't looking too hopeful, but
Hmm.
but one of the main guys, Jake Owens, man, he kind of took the reins and was able to locate the lacrosse players throughout UNC and looking at incoming freshmen who were playing lacrosse. So I built the program up to what it is right now, and we have a lot of former high school lacrosse players that are coming to play for UNC. We have some former UNC hockey
Yeah.
guys playing lacrosse, so it's
Mm.
definitely fun, man. I also think it kind of gives a better aspect of college sports. I
Yeah.
mean, it is club level, but it's
Mhm.
still you're competing against the Air Force, the DU, the Mines, the Wyoming,
Yeah.
Utah, stuff like that, or other teams like that. And
Yeah.
so you kind of get a grasp of like, okay, well, if I was an announcer, what would I want to hear right now?
Mm.
So I kind of keep pumping us up. So it's definitely coming in to tie into how I announce for like other sports.
Yeah. And that would you say your biggest lesson that you can take away from lacrosse, or what's one of the biggest lessons that you've taken away from from seeing that program being built to kind of where it's at now?
That is definitely one of the lessons I'm taking. I'm also
Mhm.
taking consideration that prior to UNC lacrosse, man, like sorry about that, my phone's going off.
No, you're good.
Prior to UNC lacrosse, man, like I never even thought about playing lacrosse. I've never thought about what it would take to be a lacrosse player.
Hmm.
And so when you kind of open up I guess your horizons, if that
Yeah.
makes sense, to different sports, you're like, hey, this is actually kind of interesting. It's kind of fun. And then you kind of get like a little more addicted. So you're constantly looking for like college lacrosse games to watch on ESPN.
Mm. And it's dude, it's growing like with the professional lacrosse league, like a variety of different youth lacrosse leagues.
Yeah.
Some here in Lexington as well, that I've seen. So it's definitely growing to a significant level now. So it's been great to see that.
Yeah, it definitely has been. I mean, for a while, we had both the Colorado Mammoth and the Denver Outlaws, and then obviously the Outlaws moved away for a while.
Yeah.
But now being back, it's given lacrosse fans lacrosse kind of year
Mhm.
round.
Yeah.
Um, and then just to see the different levels as far as like some of the universities here with their club, like we'll say Air Force and CSU,
Hmm.
their club compared to their actual like D1 teams, uh,
Hmm.
is just phenomenal. I mean,
Yeah.
these guys have 30 plus players on their D1, their D2, and their club lacrosse team. So it's like it's nice to see. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's always nice to see something that's built really grow and blossom, and UNC lacrosse, from what I've seen, has really done a good job of that. And so before we end the episode, I always give my guests a chance, Eddie, to provide advice. The one of the biggest reasons, or the part of why I started doing this and this podcast, was to help inspire, help to grow attraction of sport into young individuals and help them kind of achieve their goals through sport in that regard. And so I want to ask you kind of, what's the biggest piece of advice that you've received? It could be life advice, it could be advice through your sporting career so far. What's one of the biggest piece of advice you've received?
Um, I've I've definitely been able to meet a lot of people throughout my lifetime.
Yeah.
But I think the biggest piece of advice that I ever received was from my mom,
Mm-hmm.
and my mom passed away back in June.
Okay.
So
I'm
it's
sorry.
kind of I appreciate it, man. It's kind of sticking with me, but she always told me that if I ever get comfortable, I'm not doing enough.
Mm-hmm.
And what I take from that is, if you're not allowing yourself to be challenged in life,
Yeah.
then you're not truly living life. If you
Mm,
just allow yourself to be comfortable, then you're just settling.
gotcha.
So yeah, I think that's probably the biggest piece of advice I can give anybody. I mean, if you're a D1 athlete, a D2 athlete, D3,
Mm,
JUCO, I mean,
yeah.
it doesn't matter. Like, don't allow yourself to just settle and be comfortable. Like, keep challenging yourself, keep
Yeah.
putting yourself in those awkward positions to be successful.
Yeah. And the more awkward the position, the more success you'll have if you're able to get through. And you will be able to get through if you're challenging yourself, like you said, and really pushing yourself to be the best in that regard.
Yeah,
Um,
it is, man. Like, for example, like I never thought like anybody from, the teams I announced for would actually know who I am, but
yeah.
I can be out somewhere or even on campus, and like the soccer girls or the UNC volleyball girls will come and be like, "Hey Eddie, how's it going?" It's like, "Oh, damn, you actually know who I am. All right, cool."
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it
No,
definitely.
it's great to see, kind of, again, it's great to see where, and this is the great thing with the podcast. It's great to see where somebody comes from and where they are today. And it's great to see kind of, how you are, and allowing you to kind of reflect on where you were as a kid to now, kind of the progression of where you are today. And it's been great to see. And like I said, I hope you continue to and I know you will continue to excel in PA announcing, and whatever in life you choose to do from here on out. I know you'll do a great job. And you've, in my time there at UNC, I've always seen your work ethic. You always working hard, and really you always put 100%, 110%, I would say, into whatever you're doing. So it's great to see kind of where that process will lead you. But that's all the time we have for this episode of the Athlete Insights podcast. Again, Eddie, want to thank you for taking the time. I know it's what, 8 o'clock or 7 o'clock out there, if I'm wrong. So I know it might be a little later, but appreciate you kind of taking the time and chopping it up with me again. Thank you for your service, man. Appreciate it, and from what you've done. Again, I can't wait to see kind of what you do this season into next season, and kind of what you do in the progression of life. And so, and you can follow. I'll have your social media on the video. I'll also have your social media in the description on YouTube, and then you can follow Eddie and his career as we move through not just this year but years beyond. And you can follow my podcast, excuse me, on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, pretty much anywhere you find podcasts, you'll find this one. So, Eddie, appreciate you taking the time, man. But
Yeah, man, definitely appreciate you for the opportunity, man.
yeah, so but we'll see you next time.